Relax, have a ciggy. You're listening to the Power Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and this week my guest is David Lesh. I recorded this interview in two parts. One, a poorly edited version that I did for another show back in the day. I took the best of that interview, cleaned up the edit, and continued on. It's about 40 minutes of new stuff, which is pretty good for the conditions I was recording under. That all plays itself out in the interview with a man that is known as the criminal in some circles, and as a controversial yet successful businessman in others. He's misunderstood, is always no bullshit, and lives and has lived a crazy life. Before I go any further, I want to ask you to follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement. Email me with anything that you have to share. My email is mike@thepowellmovement, and I will get back to you. And tell your friends about the show. Finally, I want to thank the people who make this thing possible. They are Evo, Rescue Water, Spy Optic, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Please use the codes in the ads to save some money on some stuff you're gonna need. Now, let's talk to David Lesh. So it is about 12:45 in the morning. I'm at Dave Lesh's compound here at Vertica headquarters. I woke up at 4:30 West Coast time. It's super late here. I broke my New Year's resolution. A lot of things going on tonight. I've drank a lot of beer, but we're going to knock this podcast out. Dave Lesh is here.
We're getting it done.
Dave, your girlfriend's here. Say hello.
Hello.
She wants to listen in. She is a surgeon, and when I say a surgeon, you actually cut people open and operate on them.
She's an expert on all parts of the body.
Where is your focus in surgery?
Foot and ankle.
Okay, so you specialize in the foot and ankle. You're an intern. You have 2 more years. And it's amazing because when you hear about Dave Lesh's story, the last person you're going to expect him to be with is a surgeon, at least for me. But that is just me. So I guess we're going to start this thing out here, Dave, with your or something like that happened. What happened? You can't talk about that?
No, we can't.
So Dave wasn't comfortable telling that first story. The beginning of the interview was a little rocky. And then I jump right into talking about when I lived with Ryan Schmies and Dave came and visited us and my impressions on Lesh overall. You were friends with Ryan Schmies growing up in Wisconsin, and you had come out to Seattle. When I say come out to Seattle, you were riding trains and you ended up in Seattle.
Yeah, that was the summer of 2003.
So you came out and stayed with us, and I think Ryan said at some point to me, hey, Mike, my friend Dave's coming out, and I had already met you. We were going to be on a work trip for a few days. And he's like, can Dave stay at our house? Do you have any problems with that? And after meeting you a couple times at that point, I was like, actually, I think I might have a problem with it, and this is why. While Dave is an awesome guy, and I know our house would be the exact same as when we left, when we returned, I think 2 years from now, we'd hear about the party of the century that went down in our house and everything that happened that we didn't find out about. But Dave would be able to pull the wool over our eyes, be able to do that, and it would be totally fine.
No, that's nonsense. I would have taken good care. I wouldn't have done anything in your house. I don't even know that many people in Seattle. I would have just kicked it.
There's always a hustle, I feel like, to Lesh, and that's what's made you so successful throughout your life. Was it in Wisconsin where you were born?
I was born in Chicago and then moved to India when I was 6 or 9 months old. And then I was in India until I was 6 and then moved to Madison after that. And then I was in Madison till high school and moved to Portland for a few years and then moved to Colorado.
How does India come together in the whole Lesh experience? Is your family from India?
No, both of my parents are white. My mom really was the one who got all psyched on India. She's a cellist and my dad's a artist. And she just got all pumped on Indian classical music. She was actually living in Italy at the time, playing in an orchestra in Florence, and she had a month off and went to India and really fell in love with it. So she moved there and started studying the music. My dad, of course, followed, and then they came back to America to have me and then immediately went back to India. My sister was born there. My mom actually still lives there to this day. I'm sure she'll die there. My dad lives in Madison, Wisconsin. But yeah, my mom has been basically just obsessed with India her whole life.
Do you still make it back over there?
I went and visited her some years ago for 2 months, and it was a trip. Definitely not the most comfortable place to travel. And it's a hard place to be, and I think I don't have any strong desires to go back. My mom's always trying to convince me to go visit her. But I'm sure I'll go again, but it's pretty low on the list.
Do you remember much of living in India, or is this childhood for you pretty much based in Wisconsin?
I have strong memories of living in India. English was my third language. I learned Hindi and Marathi. first and went to an English school and spoke some English at home with my parents. But for the most part, I was speaking mostly Hindi and some Marathi. I grew up kind of like in a multicultural, multilingual sort of a situation.
You get back to the U.S., you're in Wisconsin. How do you get into skiing?
I played 21 seasons of soccer. I ended up making a private select club team for a while. I was pretty good at soccer. I played AA hockey, went to state. I started smoking a lot of weed in middle school and just kind of partying and hanging out with my friends. And my plan was to really get it together in high school, and that didn't work out so well. I was just having too much fun. So basically, the way skiing came about is really like playing sports. I'm an athletic guy. I like to get some energy out, and I like playing competitive sports. And for me, I couldn't really keep playing soccer and hockey because if you want to play high school sports, you have to go to school. And if you don't go to school, they don't let you play on the team. So I had no interest in going to school. So I decided to start skiing. Before high school, I went skiing maybe a handful of times. We had some middle school ski trips where we'd go skiing at nighttime after school on Friday nights at like Devil's Head and Cascade and Tyrol. I'd only been, skiing a handful of times. I didn't even have my own gear. I was renting gear. I'd never had a season pass. But I did like skiing. It was fun. My friends and I would just, get super high in the woods and ski down and steal food from the cafeteria and just be little crackheads. So I said, maybe this is a good thing for me to do. I stopped playing soccer and hockey, and I got my first season pass to Tyrol. My grandma bought me my first pair of skis and boots, and I basically just skipped a lot of class and went skiing that winter. Got rides with older high schoolers and even hitchhiked out there a few times. But I just started skiing a bunch and really just fell in love with it in high school. And ended up meeting, Schmees and Hammersley and Applegate and all those Midwest honkies. And we started going to comps around the Midwest and started competing. And it was really something that I liked and latched onto. And it was something that didn't have any rules. It didn't have any practice schedule. It didn't have any coaches. It didn't have a regimented vibe to it. I didn't have to get up early. It was just this free-flowing, do whatever you want sport. Twin tips were not around. We weren't allowed in the half pipe. There was no rails. The sport was really in its early stages. And I give a lot of credit to Schmees and Hammersley and Applegate and those guys who really helped birth the sport, especially in the Midwest where nobody had seen skiers doing the stuff that we were doing.
You were a few years younger than the rest of the crew.
I was a decent amount younger, at least 3 or 4 years younger than those guys. They were just way better than me, and I just grew up looking up to them. In the beginning, I was not great by any means at all. And my style especially was just super hack.
Were you pretty tall and awkward and lanky at that point?
Yeah, exactly. I was going through puberty and just growing a foot a day. I was very tall and lanky and my style was terrible. Then after high school, moved out to Oregon and really started focusing on the style aspect of it, which I think was key for me.
Yes, but you're getting way ahead of the game here. Back in those Schmees and the Midwest All-Stars is what you guys called that crew. There was a nickname for you that Ryan has always referred to you as the Criminal. How did you get the nickname the Criminal?
It was definitely because of criminal activity. Oh my God. I was doing so much hot shit back in the day. I was charged with 2 felonies and 5 misdemeanors as a 7th grader. As an 8th grader, I was expelled for doing a felony bomb threat, and kicked out of school. So I went to high school a quarter late. In high school, I got charged with probably between 5 and 10 felonies for stealing cars and motorcycles and mopeds and damaging property and selling weed and just everything you could think of doing and more we were doing. I had an ankle bracelet for a while. Actually, one comp that I went to with Schmees and those guys, we drove up to the UP and I had to obviously cut my ankle bracelet off because 1, I couldn't put a ski boot on with the thing on. And 2, I was going to leave the state anyway, which they were going to know, so I just cut it off, full well knowing that the consequence for me cutting off said ankle bracelet was 2 weeks in jail when I got back. And I actually ended up getting 3rd in the comp up there and got back to Madison, and sure enough, they threw the cuffs on me. So, yeah, the name The Criminal came about because, I was always hustling and doing whatever I kind of needed to.
What do your parents say, and was that the only trouble you had with the law when you were under 18?
Yeah, my parents weren't thrilled. I wasn't talking to my dad at the time, but my mom, who I was living with, was not excited. They were sick of me cutting my ankle bracelet off and violating my probation, smoking weed, and so they said to hell with it and threw me in jail for a few weeks.
So smoking weed, that's something you don't do these days?
No, I'm not into it. Weed is too powerful. I could maybe have a hit or something, but anything more than that is just too much for me.
Are there any other drugs in the life of Lesh, or you live a clean living life other than alcohol?
I'm pretty selective of what I do and when I do it, but, occasionally I'll get talked into doing some mushrooms or Molly, a little bit of blow, nothing too often or too crazy.
I feel like you have a fuck authority point of view, but it's to the point of making someone uncomfortable. I think if we were at a rail and a cop were to come, you might go there and start being Dave Lesh and telling the cop how it is, hitting the rail the last time, and everybody's like, why the hell did you have to do that, Dave? Does that happen often with you?
Yeah, I do have a fuck authority attitude for sure, but I've dealt with police so much in my life now that I am very good at dealing with police. I do know my rights, and I'm very calm and collected. I don't really say too much. I sometimes say nothing, and I really, at this point, have become pretty good at dealing with cops. There's nothing to be gained by flipping out and saying some stupid shit to a cop.
Did you do that when you were a kid?
I don't really think I ever did that too much with police. I mean, I definitely did it with, these stupid security guards, these, mall rat security guards that think that they've got a bunch of power and just like to fuck with kids who are skateboarding around and stuff. I definitely did it with security guards and that kind of thing. And I definitely do have an issue with people who have either no power or very little power, overusing and over-exercising that amount of power.
And when you were under 18, I think your motto for life was kind of like, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want. And when I turn 18, I might not do terrible things, but you did a lot of terrible things.
At one point in high school, we decided to try to better our karma, and so we only started committing crimes against very rich people and very large corporations. But before that, when we were, in middle school and freshman, sophomore year, we were doing a lot of really terrible shit. I mean, we were stealing people's cars and blowing them up and putting them in lakes that I'm sure, they didn't have insurance. These were cheaper cars. I'm sure we really fucked up some people's lives. We used to just get wasted and smoke weed and drive around in our buddy's minivan and open up the door and just shoot random joggers with paintball guns and just drive through people's yards and run over mailboxes and just light random stuff on fire and blow stuff up. And we used to drive around at 50 miles an hour and steal construction equipment and try to get it through the back window and the front window of parked cars. We'd take like rebar and throw it through cars like spears. I mean, we just did terrible shit. So yeah, there's definitely some stuff that I feel bad about doing, but we were kids.
One thing about you is you've always had a persuasive nature of you, and you're a clean-cut kid. Every single parent seems to love you, but there's a side of Dave Lesh that is smart, but also, I wouldn't say con man, but there's a deceptive nature to David Lesh.
There's a hustle there for sure. There's always a little bit of a hustle.
And it wasn't Judge Judy when you were a child, but you were on some television show where something happened in your childhood that went to, what was the show?
We were on Judge Mathis, and I sued her for throwing a bottle at my car.
What happened there? Did you spit on her car, and then she threw a bottle on your car?
Yeah. She was just being a dumb bitch, and we were like driving around, and I think my buddy spit out of the window onto her car, and then she pulled over, and we pulled up like behind her, and my buddy got out with a baseball bat and was, coming up to her sort of aggressively with the baseball bat, and she like flipped out and threw a glass bottle at my brand new car and fucked it up. I did win $1,000. They paid for me to go down on the show, sent a limo for me, skipped a day of school, and of course, it was on Warner Brothers and BET and all the various shows, all over the years.
One story I did hear, I think it happened when you moved to Portland, but I'm not 100% sure, but there was a motorcycle chase.
Yeah, that was my first adult felony. So my plan was really, once I turned 18, to stop doing all the terrible things I was doing, because my hope was to have a clean adult record. And I went to Canada one time, and it didn't even matter. They saw all my juvenile stuff, the bomb threat and everything. They called me into immigration. They, Mr. Lesh, tell us about this bomb threat you did in, 7th grade or 8th grade. I was like, oh, Jesus. So yeah, I thought all that stuff disappears, but it doesn't, FYI. But that summer that I came up and stayed with you guys in 2003, hopping freight trains and taking a road trip around the whole country for a few months. And made the mistake of buying a crotch rocket in Santa Cruz.
It was a 97 CBR 900RR Honda's race bike that year, a very fast bike. And I was going through the redwoods. My buddy was in front of me driving my car. He was speeding. Cops tried to pull him over. He didn't have a license or insurance. I figured I'd have a better chance of getting away on the crotch rocket, so I blew by him going about 140. Cops did go after me instead of him, and I gave chase through the redwoods for a while, doing about 145 miles an hour. I finally hit a corner with some gravel on it, lost the bike, tumbled for, probably 400 feet, landed probably, 150 feet from the bike. Bike was totaled. I was kind of down in the ditch. Cops zoomed by, got away. And then I spent all night like crawling through the woods. I was pretty beat up, broke into a pickup truck, slept there all night, hitchhiked into town the next morning, met up with my buddy somehow randomly at Best Western parking lot where we were hanging out, having free breakfast in the mornings, and met up with him there, drove to Portland, came back later, a few days with Bernie in his pickup truck, and scraped up the pieces of the bike off the highway in the ditch and brought him back to Portland.
I still had not gotten a motorcycle license or insurance or registration. It was, just a crotch rocket that I bought from some dude in the paper. So I rebuilt the thing. I was driving around and cop put its lights on to pull me over, and I just took off and got away, but they set up a police net and they brought the dogs in, and these dogs almost ripped my head off. I was hiding in a bush, someone's backyard, and so I got caught for that, and parents told me to go fuck myself. I had no money for a lawyer at all. Got stuck with a public defender. I was 18. I had a clean adult record at that point. I should have been able to get it reduced at least to a misdemeanor, no problem, but that didn't happen. I totally got fucked. I spent a bunch of time in jail. I was on probation for a year and a half, and it was really a bummer deal. So I'm now a felon and can't technically own firearms and that kind of thing.
Well, judging by your videos, you don't own firearms. So you're in Portland. At this point, you're probably skiing every day. And in terms of sponsors, you've had a ton. There's Liberty, K2, Smith. But I would say you were always a small-time athlete with each brand, per se. And it was all because of your hustle. You made shit happen, and you made sure you had a pro career. But you were never going to be a Candide. You were never going to be a Tanner. That just wasn't in your system by any means.
Well, I think what you said is more than generous. I definitely am not top level skier in the world. I think where I did excel was I was hitting some of the gnarlier urban rails for the time, and I was decently good at that. And then my other kind of niche was when I started skiing big mountain stuff, being able to throw decent tricks off of natural hits. I was starting to kind of feel pretty comfy and good at that. And what I became really good at was being a productive video and photo skier, where I was able to put together, video parts and get good photos with photographers for magazines and articles. I was hardworking. I could always get the shot. So, if it took hiking the thing a few more times or making 8 inches of powder look like it was 3 feet deep, I think what I brought to the table to my sponsors was, and still is, being able to produce content and have an input with product development and just kind of being a productive, marketable skier, not just somebody who sits around and gets high all the time and just expects the money to flow in.
How much was the most you were able to make in your career as a pro skier before you started a business or did any shit on your own?
I think the most I was ever making was maybe $15,000 a year at the very most. They were paying for my travel and some, other expenses and stuff, but I think the most actual cash I got in a year is probably maybe $15,000.
That was probably 2006 to 2008-ish?
Yeah, that's right. 2006 to maybe 2009, somewhere in there.
And that's the poor Lesh days. Yeah. That's when you don't have money, when you're trying to be a pro skier, trying to live off of brands that you hope are going to support you and make it happen. But really, there's not that much money in skiing for a skier at your level. And What else do you do to make ends meet?
There's not a lot of money. The way that I was really able to make ends meet was by offering more value to my sponsors. So I was doing design work, photography. I was helping put together catalogs and dealing with the SIA trade show booths and all various kind of aspects of marketing for those companies.
In your pro ski career, videos were the big thing for you. They are today for you as well, but it's a totally different thing because you're producing your own videos and you're able to control that content. But when other people were controlling the content, what are you really proud of that was put out with Dave Lesh's name on it?
I think, when I was shooting with like Level 1 and Rage and stuff, it was just a lot of time and effort that was spent into putting together those handrail sections and, traveling all over the world, Japan and Europe, and building jumps. People don't understand how much work goes into putting together, a 3-minute long section. Now, I think the world has changed. People have shorter attention spans, and the world is more all about these little, very short viral edits. So we've focused more and more on putting together our own kind of short pieces of viral content rather than these half an hour long movies.
And I'm thinking more about the video parts that you put out. Ski-wise, when you look back, you're like, you've got to see this part that I did. Because all the stuff now, it tells a story, and it's not really about the skiing. Sure, there's skiing in it, but it's not like, hey, this is the gnarliest stuff out there. It's more,
lifestyle.
Hey, I'm going to blind you with fucking craziness.
Yeah. No, I think for me, my big thing was technical handrails. I wasn't doing the craziest tricks onto them and off of them, but I was able to like grease very technical, 6 to 8 side kink, crazy, rails with drop offs on one side, and I could get them within the first like 3 to 5 times. So I think for me, like my more proud moments were like greasing super gnarly urban handrails within like a few tries.
You've been invited to some pretty big events over your career, and you might not have done well. I don't even know what you've done, but that's irrelevant. Getting invited is a huge deal, and there's only a handful of people. I think you did 2 Red Bull Play Streets, which is a crazy event through the streets of Europe. And the talent level is something that maybe you're not even used to in contests, because this is the best of the best, and Lesh is there. And how do you get into those kind of contests?
That's a good question. I don't really remember how I got invited. I think I was just friends with all those European guys, and I really actually don't remember why or how I got invited. But yeah, they invited me to Play Streets, I think maybe 3 times.
And it's pretty much an event through the city where they build like the gnarliest course ever.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's insane. They spend like a few $1 million, building rails and jumps through an Austrian town.
Is there a Lesh lobby to try to get into events, or do you just get invited to them in your career?
No, I didn't lobby for any of them. I was just kind of cruising around Europe for a lot of the winter, and they would just invite me to things. I did a bunch of like the European comps, but I really didn't do a ton of comps in my day. I was mostly photo and video skier.
Being a skier at that point, it's not like you said you're making like 15 grand or whatever. What kind of other jobs do you have to make ends meet?
For a few years, I was only skiing in the winter, and 15 grand was enough to get me by in the winter because they were also paying for travel and stuff like that. And then in the summertime, I was just doing random little odd jobs. I'd paint houses or do some remodeling, random little stuff.
Did anyone ever terminate your employment in your lifetime?
Oh, yeah. I've been fired from all kinds of jobs.
Any interesting reasons?
I mean, I've been fired from a lot of jobs. I worked at Walgreens for a day. I worked at Target for a day. I worked at McDonald's for damn near a year. I worked at Played Against Sports for maybe 9 months. I think they eventually fired me from Played Against Sports for playing disc golf in the store and hitting golf balls and like knocking out all the ceiling tiles. And I did very little work there.
I'm going to take a break real quick to talk about my sponsors. And my first sponsor is Evo, and they've supported the podcast since day one. If you're a fan of the show, I hope you buy your skis, snowboard, bikes, outerwear, everything from Evo. They're the best retail experience in Denver, Seattle, Portland, and Whistler. And their website, evo.com, features the best prices, an amazing user experience, a no-hassle return policy, and free shipping on orders over $50. If you're in store, let them know you listen to the Powell Movement, and you'll get an additional 10% off. My next sponsor is Rescue Water. They are Proactive Recovery and another longtime supporter of the show who makes a product I believe in. Drink one Rescue Water after working out or a big night, and you will feel the difference in hydration. It's time to say goodbye to your traditional sports drink and try Rescue Water. You can pick some up at the store, on Amazon, or head on over to rescuewater.com. That's RESQ water.com. Enter the code RescueWater TPM, that's all one word, and you will save 20% off a 12-pack or 24-pack case. Those are my sponsors. I think there's a big misconception in the ski industry that you are a full-on trust fund kid that has everything he wants from his parents, but you've already mentioned that your parents weren't even buying you gear back in the day, and they wouldn't get you a lawyer when you were 18 and needed one. So I can see that you don't have a trust fund and you've worked hard for what you've got. But you have a lot. And I think when people look at social media and they see the airplane, they see the warehouse, they see the parties, they just see that you have this money. But in 2009 or probably 2008 is when the ideas for First Drop came together. Tell me how you went about starting a company, because you did it different than most people I know would do it. And I think it's a valuable lesson to kids out there to see how to start something up.
Although maybe it is a valuable lesson, I don't know how easy it would be for other people to do what I did. I've never had a trust fund. My parents have no money. And I started the company with a total of $2,012. I had to do everything myself. There was no way I was going to have any money to hire people to do anything. So, I took all the photos myself. I made the website myself. I set up the payment gateway. I built the team. I designed the products. I built the size charts. I found the factories. I did everything myself, and I had no employees for the first year. So I spent basically $2,012 on samples and domain hosting, email hosting, just kind of your basic stuff, shipping for the samples. And I had enough pull in the ski community that I could put my name on the line and say, hey, I'm a reputable person and I'm creating some outerwear, and buy it and I won't screw you over. So people placed their pre-orders, and I took the pre-order money and funded production with pre-order money, basically, and kind of grew it from there. I never had any loans, never had any lines of credit. I had a personal credit card with a few grand limit or something, but that was pretty much it.
Did you head over to China and find these factories yourself?
Yeah. When I started Vertica in 2009, that summer, I couldn't afford to go to China myself. I would have loved to go, but there was no way that I had the money to do that. So I found factories online myself and just did everything through email and Skype. And then as soon as the company started blowing up, really was not happy with the quality of the stuff we were getting. So I went to China that next year and found new factories myself in China. And I've gone back to China every 1 or 2 years since 2009.
You've been to China a lot, and there's crazy experiences between factories and all the different things that you've had to see. You experience a lot of things, put yourself in a lot of places, and what's the craziest thing Lesh has experienced there?
Anything really from having like the cops in Hong Kong chasing me down and like threatening to pull my passport and put me in jail.
For what?
I was in Hong Kong and I rented a car and I was parking in a parking garage. Actually, I was trying to pull around, basically just do a U-turn inside of a parking garage, and it made me go through like a gate, and then it wanted me to pay something or do something on the way out. I didn't really know what it was trying to do. It was in Chinese. So I drove around the gate, and they called the cops on me, and they thought I was a woman because I had, long hair. And so they got the license plate down, and they tracked me down to the hotel, and the cops were at the hotel trying to arrest me, and it was like this whole deal. So I had to go back to the parking garage and pay like the $4 or something so that they wouldn't throw me in Hong Kong jail.
Have you ever been arrested in a foreign country?
No, and I'm trying to keep it that way.
I guess you're a world traveler. You grew up in India, so it's probably not too crazy for you going over there. But when you're finding warehouses, do people look at you as like the dumb white guy who doesn't know what he's doing, or are they actually treating you with respect? How does that work?
Oh, no. I mean, the Chinese, they love tall Americans. I never get the feeling that they look at me as a dumb white person. I think they idolize Western culture and Hollywood and white people in general, and anyone from America. But the language barrier can be tough. The food is absolutely inedible for the most part, especially in rural China, where the factories and stuff are. And the first time I went to China, I was just so excited. I love Asian culture. I love Asian food, and I've always wanted to check out China. So the first time I remember being just super excited, and now I'm like, oh God, I gotta go to fucking China. So we try to break it up with some time in Thailand or a little bit of time in Hong Kong, Macau, somewhere to break up the time spent in China.
So you've got this company off the ground, and it's pretty successful off the bat, correct?
Yeah, it really took off right away, a lot more than I ever expected. I was actually in school full-time, living in a little one-bedroom apartment on the hill in Boulder. I actually finished that semester of school and got all A's, maybe a B or two, and then never went back after that.
You named it First Drop, and I think you exist for First Drop for a couple of years, but then you rebrand to Vertica. Why do you make that move?
When I started the company, like I mentioned, I had zero money. There was no way I was going to hire lawyers or do any kind of IP work. I was not getting trademarks. I just was not able to do any of that. I liked the name First Drop, but even from the beginning, the only URL that was available to me for free at the time was firstdropouterwear.com, which was pretty long, especially when you incorporate it into an email address. So telling people our email address over the phone, info@firstdropouterwear.com, and having to spell it out, especially for foreigners who didn't speak great English, was really a mouthful. So I wanted, a shorter URL, and firstdrop.com was not available. And so I wanted to come up with a 7-letter word that was unique. This is also around the time when Instagram and hashtags and stuff were coming about. And I wanted a unique name that people could search on Google or whatever, or hashtag on Instagram or Facebook, and would come up immediately with. And then I wanted something unique that was 7 letters or less that had an available URL with it. And I also wanted to trademark it. If I ever were to sell the company, having trademarks attached to your brand is crucial. So the company was only 2 or 3 years old at the time, so I figured better to do it earlier than later. Because of all those reasons, we hired an IP lawyer, and I got the trademarks and got the URL and got the social media accounts, and really did it right.
How much does it cost you to rebrand everything?
I mean, I have no idea. I didn't have to hire an IP lawyer or anything. I did all the stuff myself, so I don't think it cost very much in the actual doing of it, but maybe there was some cost in, just getting people to recognize the new name brand.
I think the rebrand is around the same time you launched your signature video last Friday. And the video's pretty unreal. It's like a rap video if rappers had no rules like the old days. But taking it up 4 levels, and the way it's put together in those videos, I can see why some people are offended. And how does the concept of that video come together? And then tell me about the fallout.
So last Friday, we filmed it was either 4 or 5 days that we filmed the entire video. I didn't own a video camera at the time, so I actually flew out a kid who I met on New Schoolers. I think he was in high school at the time. I flew him out to Colorado and paid his way in exchange for him filming the video. And I edited it. I conceptualized it. It's a video that I've been wanting to make forever. I mean, who doesn't love guns and girls and rallying and skiing? It was just kind of a no-brainer. You know, all the ski edits throughout time have always just been ski porn, where it's just music to skiing. And I wanted to kind of make it a little more interesting than that, a little bit more developed. I wanted to cram it all into one day, this one epic day. Kind of like Candide now. He's cramming all this crazy stuff into one run. Obviously, he's not doing it all in one run. It's creating some interest. It's creating a storyline. My goal was to take all these elements and combine them into one day and into a storyline, basically. So flew the kid out and we filmed it in 4 or 5 days. I edited it and we threw it online. And to be totally honest, I expected it to get some people's attention, but the effect that it had was a lot more than I had anticipated. It was really an interesting thing because the company had already really taken off and we were growing 600% a year and the company was doing really well. And nobody in the ski industry had ever made a video like that before. And I didn't think anything of it. It was like nothing. We filmed it in a few days in Breckenridge. You know, it was just like a wham, bam, super quick, nothing thing. And I threw it together, edited it in maybe a week. And everyone around the world was just freaking out. You know, people are calling the cops. We're all getting fired from our coaching jobs. I mean, we had customers calling in from around the world. I was pulled over by the police 5 times. I mean, it was like this whole ordeal. There were people online saying, oh my God, you wiggers, you've ruined your company and this is going to be the end of your company. All this shit. And I was like, oh my God, like maybe they're right, you know, like maybe this is the end of Vertica. I don't know. I didn't know anything at the time. I didn't know what was going to happen. And of course, always people, the naysayers and the haters who beat the loudest. And you have a lot of other people who are like, you know, this is dope. Nobody's done this before. These guys don't give a fuck. And if you have half a brain, you can see that we're not just some wiggers who think that we're gangsters. We're just kids out there having fun and putting together entertaining content. It really helped us immensely. It's hard to get noticed as a small company up there against, you know, these big players in the industry. And it got people talking. It got people sharing the video with their friends. And the video went relatively viral. It got a few 100,000 views and really gave us something that set us apart from all the other bland, boring companies out there that have PC marketing. And then we made the apology video, obviously, which wasn't apologizing for anything. Then we did the whole spoof with New Schoolers, pretending that I got arrested for running away from the cops in my car and crashed my car and had the fake mugshot. We kind of played that into everything. And then we made this Friday, trying to just take everything to the 10th degree. And then we made next Friday. With each video, we tried to diversify the music and diversify the action and still have all the core elements that we wanted, but change things up a little bit for interest and also incorporate elements throughout all of them that were a little bit more humorous and lighthearted to let people know that we're not serious about it.
Throughout your videos, you've done a lot of things that could offend a lot of people. You've exploited women. You've kind of exploited men. You've had guns. You've had drugs. I think the only thing you haven't done is homophobic slurs.
Well, we were all naked together in the dumpster. You know, that was kind of homophobic.
Yeah, but it wasn't anything negative against gay people. It was just, hey, we're a bunch of dudes naked in the dumpster.
So are you giving me a new idea for our next video?
Is that the goal? Is it to offend people and make them talk about it?
Yes, for sure. To some extent. I mean, I don't know about to specifically offend people, but it is to create interesting content that gets people talking about, you know, a small brand that otherwise people might not notice or know about.
Is there anything that's too much? We were just saying that homophobia, which is terrible in my opinion, is not something to exploit, but is it something that you would look to exploit for press?
I think most things can be tackled somehow in some kind of a funny or self-deprecating, interesting way. I think that there's a tasteful and interesting way to go about most things.
But you don't do that. Tasteful and interesting is not your motto.
Our new video was, I would think, more on the tasteful side. With me riding the camel naked and stuff, I think that video is definitely more on like the tasteful side, the less offensive side.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, compared to what you've done in the past, you're not pouring milk on naked girls by any means.
So, you know, we're moving in a
You're moving forward. It's 2019.
Sure.
You drop one of these videos, and then it must have been 3 weeks later. There's a photo of Dave Lesh standing with Obama, looking official in a nice suit. And how does that one come together?
Yeah, that was actually very interesting timing with the whole thing. But yeah, I think you're right. It was right after one of the Friday videos. And I can't believe Secret Service, because they vet all the people that meet Obama, meet the president. They vet him, and I'm sure they saw those videos. I don't know how it was that they still let me meet him, but they did. The way that came together is I was hooking up with this chick at the time who had a friend who was doing advanced planning for the White House. And everywhere they go, they need people to help drive the presidential motorcade. This is kind of how it all tied together. He was coming to Denver, coincidentally enough, to give talks about small business and various programs and incentives for small business. So I not only was able to drive a White House staff van in the motorcade, but I was also able to meet him and talk with him for, maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then get my photo taken with him. And I talked to him about Vertica and small business and the whole deal. Yeah, it worked out super well. And then put all that stuff online, and I was actually had an opportunity to have lunch with him then the next day. Part of the deal of being able to do that is you're not supposed to use your interaction with him for any personal financial gain. And I definitely marketed it heavily with Vertica. And so the Secret Service saw that, and they canceled the luncheon for the next day.
Always doing a little Lesh.
I mean, it had to happen. It is what it is.
Did he have any personal insight that he shared with the Lesh?
We kind of talked about small business, and I told him, some of the challenges that I faced starting the small business, which at that time, 2009, at the height of the recession, having no cash flow and not being able to get any loans from banks. So we talked a little bit about that, and asked me about my company, and he also asked for some ski gear. We actually ended up sending him a box of Vertica gear to the White House, which I don't know if he got or ever used or whatever, but that happened. And then at the end of the conversation, he said, "Good luck running your company." And I said, "Good luck running the world," basically, because America kind of runs the world. Then him and Secret Service laughed, and that was the end of it.
Now I'm going to take another break to talk about sponsors, and my next sponsor is Spy Optic. And I've worn a lot of goggles and sunglasses in my day. None have the fit and function of what Spy delivers. On the snow, I rock the Ace EC. It's a high-tech chromoplast lens that becomes 3 lenses at the push of a button. It is the best goggle ever made. Off the hill, I wear the Hate 2 sunglasses. And there's a ton of other frames that I like, but that is my favorite. There's a ton of choices for you, and while I can't offer you a discount on the Ace EC, which is arguably the best goggle ever built, I can offer you 20% off Spy's entire site. When you're at checkout at spyoptic.com, enter the code capital TPM, the number 20, all one word, and you'll get 20% off your entire order. My final sponsor is the 10 Barrel Brewery out of Bend, Oregon. They make beer and like to drink it outside, and the beer they make is awesome. And when they're not making or drinking their awesome beer outside, they're supporting some of the coolest projects and events in snow. The events start up on March 9th at Copper Mountain with the first of 3 Hella Big Air events. On March 23rd, there's the Goggle Tan Rail Jam at Ski Bowl. On March 30th, another Hella Big Air at Mount Bachelor. And the third and final Hella Big Air stop has been confirmed at Sierra at Tahoe on April 6th. So a lot of cool events. They also have Mike Bassich's Beer Cat, which is the first ever Snow Cat pub. So next time you're out buying beer, support the brand that supports you, the 10 Barrel Brewery. You can find out more about the events, their pubs, and the beer over at 10barrel.com. Those are my sponsors. Now let's get back into the podcast. In thinking of this Friday, you're in a car, you flip that car and end up driving again. Were there any injuries in that?
Oh, no, that was nothing. Have you ever seen the MIA music video that she's on top of a car and they're in Saudi Arabia or something driving cars on 2 wheels?
I vaguely remember it.
It's an unbelievably well shot music video. I love that music video. But I really wanted to put a car on 2 wheels, and my concept was to drive a car on 2 wheels with naked girls on top of it shooting machine guns. I wanted to take her concept and incorporate it into our video. So I bought that Isuzu Trooper, welded the spider gear and the rear diff together to lock the rear 2 wheels. We built the whole ramp. I mean, we went through the whole deal of it. We lined up a parking lot and we had cameramen and the whole setup. Our plan was to put the car on 2 wheels. Well, we really ran out of time with making the edit, and all of a sudden it was like February or March and we had to finish filming if we wanted to get the edit out. So we just real quick went to a parking lot, It was like freezing cold, and the key for that stunt, to get a car on two wheels, you really need to have decent tires and you need to have warm pavement, neither of which we had. It was negative 15 degrees or whatever, and the tires were just some like super shitty 4-ply junk tires. So we could not, for the life of us, get this thing onto two wheels. After an afternoon of trying to get it onto two wheels, which was not going to happen, we were like, all right, well, fuck it. Let's just try to flip the thing. Maybe, we can catch it and get onto two wheels. In the video, you see us just, whipping it as hard as we can to try to flip it. And B was like, dude, let me drive. What the fuck is wrong with you? Can't you flip this goddamn trooper? This thing's top heavy as hell. So B gets in there and he whips the thing around as hard as he possibly can for 20 minutes, cannot flip it. And finally, I was like, I'm doing it. So tires were like warm enough at that point to sort of grab. And we found that parking lot that had like a little half pipe kind of shape in the bottom of it, which helped the tires hook up. We were just whipping it as hard as I could left to right to get this thing to go. And the shot in the video is of it finally flipping. And that was what we were trying to do. And we both kind of know what to do. We put our hands in it because the windows were open. We didn't want to get our hands smashed underneath the car or whatever. We just kind of went into the tuck mode and stomped it. We were totally fine, not a scratch. And then we just filmed the rest of the video with no windshield, no windows, and rallying it around, shooting guns out of it.
Next Friday, you guys impersonated the homeless. Did you hear any flack for that?
No, I don't remember hearing a single piece of bad press about that. So the way the Next Friday concept came about, so last Friday it is what it is. This Friday was like all the same stuff times 10 kind of a thing. And then next Friday was supposed to kind of like flip it around. So instead of me pouring milk on girls pouring milk on me. Instead of me waking up in a bed full of naked girls, I wake up in a dumpster full of naked dudes. Instead of being rich and balling out, we all start out as being broke homeless people that have to like work our way up throughout the day to become basically ourselves again. So that was how that concept came to be.
You have a pretty gnarly kite crash.
Yeah, it was a speed wing, yeah. That was on Oprah and Fail Army and the whole deal. That was definitely one of the moments in my life where I was pretty sure I was going to die. We were in Crested Butte filming on this frozen lake, and my two friends, who are brothers, we were on a $20,000 turbocharged sled, and there was a pretty strong wind, and so because of the wind, I told them that, hey, you guys don't have to go very fast. You just barely putt. And of course, he just got a little happy on the throttle, and there's something called toe lock. Toe lock happens when basically you overexert the forces of what that wing can hold. It's being pulled one direction too hard and the wing's pulling it back the other direction, and the wing becomes uncontrollable, which is why I basically just got towed into the ground from 60 feet up and in the air, accepted my death. And I've been in some pretty gnarly car crashes and stuff, and I know it's good if you just totally relax every muscle. So I just accepted my death and got really relaxed, and you can see in the video it's hard enough to pull over a snowmobile with two people on it. And I went down into the ground probably 5 or 6 feet, made a really nice bomb hole, and had a full face helmet on. The rope cinched around my waist and I couldn't breathe, and I thought I broke a few ribs, but I think it was just bruised. And I was fine. I had a few bruises and a black eye, but I was totally fine, and it was nothing less than a miracle.
Dave, I think that's a good summary for your whole life, man. A few bruises, a couple black eyes, but nothing less than a miracle. While the first video that you made, it must have cost like a couple grand. You fly a dude out, he makes the video for you, and you like find him on the internet. It eventually gets to be, I would think, more expensive. And what's a budget for a video that Dave Lesh is making these days?
Oh, it's all pretty cheap. I mean, I'm able to use my friends and resources to do it very, very inexpensively. I mean, to make a video that normally would probably cost, a few $100,000 if you had to hire permits and planes and pilots and insurance and camels and the whole deal, I'm able to make for maybe a few grand just because I've got a lot of friends with connections who can make it happen.
And how many people are watching the videos that you're making for a few grand?
Our last viral marketing video, I think, is up to maybe 5 or 6 million views, the camel video.
And when you make them, do you consider them like we're making a viral marketing video?
The last one was definitely a viral marketing video. Yeah, we were trying to get the brand out there to a lot of new people, and we were trying to show off some of the features of our outerwear and make a name for ourselves.
When you put a video out like that, how much does that increase your sales? You put that out, you're direct to consumer, so your margins are going to be way better than anybody else, and you can keep the price down a little bit and still make great margins. But how much are you able to generate in revenue?
I mean, it was big after that video. It also helped my celebrity friend Dan posted the video to his social media. We did a few $100,000 in like 6 or 7 days after that video. It was significant.
Your friend Dan that you say you've done a lot of trips with him. I haven't seen a trip with him in almost a year, I feel like.
We were in Thailand a few months ago, in Hawaii.
Dan, what's his last name? I never pronounce it right.
Bilzarian.
And he's like a lifestyle money dude who likes guns, chicks, and traveling and partying.
Yep.
And you like all of those things. Have you been on a trip with Dan?
I have not. I was on call when they last went to Thailand, so I held down the fort here with Bravo.
How does those trips work? Does Dan say, hey, you show up here and everything else is taken care of?
I mean, it depends. I try to pitch in where I can.
But I mean, he's a rich dude. He doesn't need your money.
He doesn't, but it's more of a principle thing. Yeah. I sort of have to sneakily pay for stuff because he would never let me. But yeah, I mean, most of the stuff is stuff that he doesn't even have to pay for. It's resorts that are hosting him, and a lot of the stuff is comped. So obviously, jet fuel and whatever is not cheap, but the trips, I think, generally cost him less than what people might imagine.
And I guess I'll preface this one with, I really respect the criminal David Lesh. I feel like you have done a lot of things, but to be honest, a lot of people don't like you. A lot of people do like you. And there's a love-hate relationship with that. And how does that affect you as a person, knowing that people don't like you because they think you're something that they know nothing about?
In the beginning, it was definitely harder. I remember when I first started the company and people were talking shit about me and Vertica and stuff online, it definitely affected me more. And then I think as, I became more successful and the company took off, I really just started caring about that stuff less and less. And I, made decisions in my life that made me happy and I felt that were correct and good. And I just started giving less of a shit about what people thought. And that was very, very liberating. So as time has gone on, I think I've just only let that go more and more. And the people who know me generally like me. And if they don't, that's fine. I don't worry too much about, the naysayers.
But it's weird having people talk about you on the internet and people that don't know you.
In the beginning, it definitely did bother me. And I felt more of a need to sort of explain myself and tell my backstory. And I'm not just some trust fund kid. I felt more of a need to sort of justify myself. But now I just don't give a shit. I go and live my life. I've got a great life. I'm happy. Regardless of what people think of me, I'm just going to kind of do what I want to do.
When you think of your target market for Vertica, it's all young, impressionable kids. You're not marketing to people that are 40. You're marketing to 14 to 25?
Yeah, for the most part, our demographic has definitely been getting more broad, I'd say, in the last few years, especially with our marketing videos and stuff like that, becoming a little bit more PC. I think we are reaching out to a little bit more of a wider demographic. And I would say that it is getting up to, almost 40 years old easily at this point.
Well, I've never seen a 40-year-old or even a 30-year-old wear Vertica. I see younger kids, and I see a decent amount of them wear them in the mountains in the Northwest. So it's definitely out there, and I see it. But I wouldn't say in my neck of the woods, but I'm not in Colorado, and that's your home base, that people are that age. But the low end is probably 13, 14 that think you guys are cool.
For sure.
And you promote a lifestyle that's not cool for 13 or 14-year-olds in a fun, this is Dave Lesh way. Do you ever feel guilty about that at all? Because it's not what parents want to see their kids doing.
No, I've never spent a minute of my time feeling guilty or even thinking about it. I think that there's a lot of people out there in the world who are and are not role models, and it's up to parents to kind of guide their kids as to who they should follow as role models. There's a lot of shitty role models out there that are a lot worse than me, and I think I'm promoting some pretty good values, being an entrepreneur, self-made entrepreneur, professional skier, athlete, somebody who, pushes themselves in all different kinds of areas of life. I'm a pilot, I travel. So I think, if you really look into who I am as a human being, that I am actually probably a decent role model.
Okay, I think that's arguable. I wouldn't call you a role model nor a decent role model for any child by any means. For a young adult coming up, yes, I would call you, I wouldn't say a role model. I would say an inspiration for how to create your own business and work hard and make things happen. Role model, maybe not in my opinion, but what you've been able to achieve by the way you've done it is admirable.
Thank you.
It's not an easy thing to do. You're 35 now?
33, take it easy.
How long can you do this, you think? How long can you be, because I'm going to say your market's younger than you say it is. I mean, it doesn't go up to 40, Dave. I'm in that older market. I don't see many older people wearing Vertica.
There's definitely a smaller percentage of 40-year-olds that wear our gear, for sure.
How long can you keep being cool to young kids doing the shit that you're doing? Because you're getting older. You say you're getting more PC, and I would think every year you're going to get a little bit less crazy in the things that you do because it's already visible. And is it something that is a long-term thing, or are there going to be other products that you're going to create?
Well, I think as a company gains notoriety, it's less important for them to have these super controversial pieces of marketing. So as I get older, I'm not sure how the content will change and morph, but I think we'll always have new skiers and snowboarders that are riding for us, and a lot of up and coming talent that will bring their own marketing and creativity and content to the table.
In your business, you're not one to shy away from controversial athletes, and the one that comes to mind is Spriggs, and he got in a lot of trouble. It was like the worst kind of trouble an athlete can get in. There's violence and, alcohol. I don't know if there's drugs involved. And he's turned his whole life around. But to stand by a dude like that at that point, does that do anything to the brand, or do you care?
No, that didn't faze me in the least. I mean, I don't believe most of that. And I kind of got the story directly from him. And I didn't really have too much of an issue with what happened and the steps that he was taking in his life to kind of better his life afterwards. Stop drinking. And I was happy to be a part of his comeback and someone who was there supporting him to kind of put that behind him and move on with his life.
Well, Dave, I don't know where we're going to go from here, really. Like I said, I've been drinking a lot. We're going to jump right into inappropriate questions because why not? I talked to one of your buddies. I can't remember his last name. His first name is Nick. Last name is?
Burncott.
Okay, so we're going to jump into Bernie, a.k.a. Nick's inappropriate questions, which I haven't heard yet. He texted them to me earlier, but like I said, I've been drinking beer heavily. We started at 4. It's 1:08 a.m.
Doing it big, dog.
Yeah, man, I'm just doing it, and we're going to power through this interview. Hopefully it works out. I got to see where Bernie's questions are. He sent me a bunch of audio messages, and I think I only have one right here.
Lesh, what did you experience after moving out of your parents' house at the age of 17 and moving into the Beacon Street house?
That was an interesting year. Senior year of high school, moved out with Nick, who was in college, and my buddy Vince, who was a high school dropout. All three of us were selling drugs and partying. I was going to school occasionally. I did actually manage to graduate high school miraculously. But we always had stolen cars and mopeds in the garage. Sometimes all with the same license plate. I mean, it was pretty loose for sure.
How do you even have money when you're 17 years old and you move to a college campus?
It was cheap. We were splitting a house with 3 of us. We were all selling weed, and I was working 2 jobs. I was able to make ends meet.
Nate Hammersley, you've known Lesh since he was 15 years old. You've been through a lot of Lesh-caused problems. Do you have your first inappropriate question ready for Dave?
I do. My first inappropriate question goes back some time to some things I've seen with Dave. And I'm wondering if he has a habit of wearing boxers to gas stations.
Yeah, I guess I'm not in a habit of wearing only boxers to gas stations, but the occasion that Hammersley's talking about, we were taking a ski trip to northern Michigan for a comp. On the way back, we were driving through Gary, Indiana, a pretty rough part of Gary, Indiana. I think we went out of our way to maybe find the most shitty part of Gary, Indiana that we could. The car we were driving to Michigan broke down on the way there, so we had to rent, I think it was a Chevy Trailblazer or something. And there was 6 of us in there. It was me and Hammersley and Schmeez and Dirty Matt Brogan, and I don't remember who else was in there, but there were 6 of us, and all of our gear was crammed into the back, and there wasn't room for me to sit on a seat, so I was sitting in the trunk on top of all of our gear, and it was super fucking hot in there. So I literally took off all my clothes, and I was riding in my boxers, and we got out in Gary, Indiana to get gas, and I just got out in my boxers, and there's a picture of me, a 17-year-old white kid, in the most thug neighborhood of Gary, Indiana. And there's all these dudes in Impalas and shit pulling up drug dealers. And there I am, little scrawny white boy in boxers in the middle of a gas station in Gary, Indiana.
Let's jump into question number 2.
Question number 2 for Dave Lesh. I know that he spent a lot of time traveling around the country, sometimes in planes, sometimes by rail. Wondered if he had any times he could tell us about a gnarly situation with any female rail companions or not.
Oh, wow, because he did travel the rails, and we will see if there was any cohabitation in the train cars.
There were not any interesting situations with female hobos, and any of the female hobos that we did come across were fucking gnarly, and there's no way that I would have even talked to them.
How about the buddy that you traveled with? Because he wasn't Lesh. He was like a small, mini, different version of you, and no cohabitation for him either?
What do you mean by cohabitation?
Banging hobos.
I don't believe that he banged any hobos.
Hooking up with hobos.
No, neither of us hooked up with any hobos.
You just rolled around with bear spray?
Yep, bear spray and knives.
Did you ever get arrested on that trip?
Yeah, I got arrested in Hays, Kansas, got pulled off of a freight train in Hays, Kansas. Made it away for about 4 or 5 hours, and the cops eventually found us.
Now we will go with your final inappropriate question.
Final inappropriate question. There's not a lot of filter that I've ever seen Dave have. And I am just wondering if that has caused problem with him with any of his sponsors in the past.
No, I don't believe I've lost any sponsors. I was coaching the CU freestyle ski team for almost 10 years, and I was removed from coaching the team, and I was also physically removed from CU campus because of the Last Friday video. And they gave me an ultimatum, which was to take down the video or to, lose my coaching job and get removed from campus. And I told them the video is not coming down.
Dave, I want to thank you for your time. We're going to see how this thing turns out because there were a lot of factors going against us. Me drinking a lot, you not being available earlier, us being at a bar. A lot of things happened, but it's always a pleasure to see you. I thank you for always letting me stay at your house. And while you have a lot of haters, I am not one of those. I love everything you've been able to achieve in your life. You're right on the edge of legal all the time, but you make it happen.
Well, thanks, Paul. I appreciate that.
So that was time with David Lesh, and I've loved talking about Lesh with other people. Most assume he has money from his parents and that he's a total asshole, but he's not. He does have a side that I can see that rubs people the wrong way. I mean, I remember one time at Chuck E. Cheese, he had an insane game of skee ball, and he won all the tickets in the machine. And some guy came, he had to refill the machine. Somehow, Dave ended up rigging the skee ball machine so it couldn't be locked. And when the guy put in the 10,000 tickets or whatever that was fed into the machine, Dave was able to open up the compartment, take those tickets, and we bought an amazing toy, which I can't remember what it was. But just some of the things that Dave does are not normal, but they are pretty amazing. I mean, I can remember he also got me in trouble at a local venue here in Seattle at the 1242 premiere. We had set it up at this Metalheads kind of just really rough bar. It was a great music venue and a great place for a premiere. And Dave was underage at the time. And Dave kept going upstairs where he was being served alcohol. And the owner of the bar kept coming up to us saying, hey, that kid keeps coming up and getting booze, bringing it downstairs where he's not supposed to. We went and let Dave know that he couldn't be doing that or we were going to get in trouble with the owner of the venue. But Dave does what Dave does, and next thing you know, I think Dave was being kicked out of the bar. The bar got a ticket that was pretty expensive for serving minors, and we never spoke with the people who owned that bar again. I don't think they were very happy with us, and if they saw us, they were the type of people that looked like they would beat us to a bloody pulp. So just some of the things that you get, especially with a younger David Lesh. But as he's gotten older, he becomes less sketchy, I believe, and that's a good thing. Dave's done a shit ton with his life, and there's still a lot more life to him as he's really young, so it'll be interesting to see where Vertica and David Lesh head. Before I get out of here, I want to thank you for listening to the podcast, ask you to review me on whatever platform you listen to me on, and support the brands that support the show. Evo, Rescue Water, Spy Optic, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Have a great week, everyone.